This is something that I've brought up before in some of the previous installments of my glorified personal online journal, and it's about the so-called dumb luck. How does that belong to the side characters section? Well, I dallied with the idea of this evil, carefully crafted master plan in motion for decades or even centuries, and this one side character wandering onto the final stage of such masterpiece, and through sheer dumbassness, this side character, let's face it, I need to self-insert myself somewhere, so might as well do it here, ruins the plan by the tiniest of movements, by the smallest of interruptions, like the flap of the wings of a very special butterfly setting off a giant storm. This is my personal wish, my self satisfaction, because I kinda don't like these wannabe long term plans set up by these supposedly super smart, intimidating villains, and every time I read about them, I just want to see some professional village idiot, some baldrick, walk over there trying to find an especially big pile of dung, stumbling over a candle, setting the entire plan on fire, literally and figuratively as well. So, if I ever do find a way to implement this into a story that won't make me cringe my feet into fists, I would love to do that. I am of course aware that this has been done before. It's by no means an original idea, but also there is this tiny little problem that I've also mentioned before, that I am in no way, shape, or form smart enough to craft an actual smart, cunning villain, so it would have to be some side villain, and the description of the plan and the villain would have to be quite vague. We will see. The LDR of that is that I love the idea of a masterfully woven aeons in preparations kinds of a plan destroyed by a less than fortunate individual who accidentally turns left instead of right when going to pick up flowers and takes care of their business onto an ancient magic circle. The problem is that I am that unfortunate person without the dumb luck part, and I don't exactly trust myself to write a villain capable of concocting something like that in the first place to then have it ruined. Hopefully that was at least semi-comprehensible, which honestly is the standard that I'm aiming for with these videos and these talks about writing my own story. And now for stories created by actual authors, this one by Jaroslav Foglar, in which Redcap and Speedy are currently sailing on their glorious vessel, washboard number, I don't know, 3 or 4 within the story so far. They are traversing the ocean in search of new lands. And unfortunately, it seems that their boat was not exactly sealed perfectly, which Redcap notices quite soon, and Speedy calms him down, saying that their washboard is sinking and the shores are still far in the distance. They do make it just in time, ending up only lightly wet, and what they find are forests crisscrossed with water tunnels, just ripe for more exploration, but that'll have to wait till tomorrow because the rest of the club is definitely waiting for them by now. and they did take longer than expected on this journey of theirs. So they pump out the water they took in on their way there. Fortunately, that's rather easy with the type of craft they used, and they report to their commanding officer, Mirek, once they get back to the main camp, that they are back and only carrying 10 inches of water below the deck. Well, Mirek sends them to change their clothes and put up those that they came in to dry up, to the mild amusement of the rest of the club, especially Indra, whose jokes receive a swift retaliation from Speedy, threatening him with a walk down the plank to enjoy some clothed swimming, and that then he'll be hanging his to dry right next to theirs. And then during the evening, around a fire, Speedy recounts their findings from earlier about those water channels in the forest. When Yarka hears someone approaching them, turns out to be two boys asking them what they are doing there in a very menacing way. Well, Speedy replies in a jest, "If you excuse us, we made a bit of soup so that we don't starve to death." The boys are not exactly amused, proclaim this whole area as their territory. Well, Mirek replies that forests and water are for everyone, and as long as the boys are allowed to be here, so are the rapid arrows. The boys leave behind a vague threat and promise of heaven's wrath if the rapid arrows attempt to cross them. That doesn't work and has the opposite effect. So the next day, the club finds a raft quite a lot bigger and slightly better on water than the washboard that was used during the previous expedition. They swiftly pack the camp. Redcap and Speedy decide to use the ship they sailed previously despite the superior option, showing loyalty to their own craft. When crossing the water, they either turned their washed up by 180 degrees, somehow magically swapped places, or the artist forgot who he put to the front from one panel to the next one, but that's just small technical difficulty. The more pressing issue is that Indra, who's been paddling right next to them, has been sending waves of water right onto poor Speedy, who complains that it's as if a rainstorm passed right over them. When Yarka notices someone standing on the shores waving at them with a white flag, when they finally land, the boy immediately jumps to them and offers his unconditional capitulation, which surprises them, and Mirak tells him that they are not there to hurt him in any way, which leads the boy to explain his circumstances. He mistook them for a clan of islanders, as they call themselves. He and his friend came to the islands to camp as well as the rapid arrows. Then they were ambushed by the islanders. He managed to run away, but his friend Beda unfortunately did not, and was kidnapped by the islanders and taken away to their private base on one of the smaller islands, leaving behind only his bag. Well, the rapid arrows decide to hide their own and venture towards the islanders' base and try to reclaim the prisoner. Well, the young boy shows them the way. When they land, they demand the release of the captive, the demands are declined, and thus the only option is violence. With sword, fire, and brimstone, Speedy is threatening to exterminate the islanders' scum, although that turns out to be slightly more difficult than expected. They have huge advantage in numbers, and thus the first attempt to set the prisoner free ends up in a failure. The washtub is sinking, and Speedy wishes the plague, smallpox, and appendicitis on their conquerors. And this is where I'm going to stop for today. The intro was way less seriously meant than some of the others. Not even an idea that I'm ready to implement at any visible point in the future. Just something that I wanted to have somewhere accessible to come back for in case, I don't know, a miracle happens and I find a way to somehow gently weave it into a story. And I'm going to continue with more adventures of the heroic club and their trials and tribulations.